Welcome to Keen on Retirement, a show dedicated to helping you thrive before and during your retirement years. If you are looking to grow and protect your wealth and want to make the second half of your life the best half, then listen in as wealth advisor Bill Keen sorts through the key issues that you need to know in a lively and candid way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Keen on Retirement. I'm your co-host, Steve Sandusky, and with me, as always, is Bill Keen and Matt Wilson. Well, gentlemen, here we are, the month of December. We're getting close to wrap up another year. I know you guys just had the annual holiday party, so how did that go?
Oh my goodness, Steve! It went really well. We're so grateful for the team and the fellowship, the community around the firm. We actually call it the Keen Wealth community because it makes up such a big part of the culture of our firm and of our client base and of our friends, and that includes the kind of some of the charitable work that we do and the friends we have in those areas, and our team and our families. So we literally named it. You know how when things kind of take on a life of their own, it's important to name those things. And so it was a perfect example of that Keen Wealth community here a few Saturdays ago, typically the first Saturday in December each year. And, we've been holding these types of events for, Matt and I have worked together. We're now in our 23rd year together, working together. And I believe we've been doing them the whole time, Matt. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I was doing them when you met me, when you were an intern, and we just kept it going.
Transitioned a little bit to virtual during COVID, but now back in person.
Yeah, we didn't miss it. We didn't miss the event. We did virtual, and in fact, we still have a version of the virtual now that holds, which we do. But we do a nice video. The team all and their families do a really fun holiday greeting, and myself, Matt does his outlook still is for the following year, and so that's a pretty cool thing we do as well. But we had I know we had 400 plus RSVPs at the event here a few Saturdays ago. It was on December 7th. And all of you, I know we kind of open it up, don't we, Matt, too? We've mentioned it on the show here a month ago or so. So if somebody wanted to come that wasn't an actual formal client of ours, of the firm, they were welcome. They just simply had to go to our website. I think we directed them here on this very show to go sign up. And we had a few folks do that as well. But we had the harpist was back. The harpist did a fantastic job here at our nice new 20,000 square foot space. Not really new now though. Over 2 years we've been in here. Still feels new, but so we had Santa on site. A lot of adults getting their picture taken with Santa, and we do so many events. This one really, and then our summer one we talk about a lot, the barbecue, that we bought our own camera, not just a camera, but what would you call that, Matt? How you go places and you can take a picture, and it puts a border on it and it names the event and then it emails it right to you. We bought one of those, so we actually own this thing,
like a photo station.
Yeah, like a photo station. So that's cool. We have the Keen Wealth photo station going there with Santa and incredible caterers. We had our friends at Local Seasons Catering, Sean Kirby and his crew back this year. Had some great food, crafts in all the conference rooms. So just I love it, and I'm so grateful to our team for helping us set that up, because Matt and I are at a point now where we get to, basically they ask us to kind of stay out of the way and just show up and just be present there and let them do their thing. So super fortunate. We also ask our team, we say, this little look behind the scenes, but there's times where folks come and maybe they don't know as many people, and others have been with us for 25, 27 years, and some are newer, and just, we ask our staff and team at Keen, just be on the lookout, like look for folks that maybe aren't talking to anybody, or that are trying to kind of find their way, or that just, maybe that aren't as talkative naturally by nature, and engage those folks and ask them about themselves and, introduce yourself, even some of our new team members. And the report we got back was that our team is just super, super caring and was out there just doing a fantastic job, help people feel very welcomed and cared for. So appreciate you asking about that. And we really enjoy it. So, and thanks to all that were able to attend as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Sounds like a wonderful event and a great opportunity for the clients to get together, to mingle with the team members, to really build that Keen Wealth community. So appreciate you sharing that.
You bet.
All right,
Steve, before you jump
yeah.
in there, I
Yeah.
have to mention, last episode, I had a little frog in the throat. And I was, had a little something I was battling on the tail end of. And I can tell today that it sounds like, did I pass it to you? I don't know, is that possible over Zoom here?
Somehow through the ether here, through the electricity, through the wonder of technology, it made its way to Oregon.
Yeah, you didn't think you were going to get by with not having us point that out today, did you?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So the voice is a little rough today. It's a good thing we've got the mic mute button here, so people don't have to hear me cough.
Oh, boy. Well, you look as energetic as ever, so you're wearing
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I will say that just today, I exercised today for the first day in probably almost 10 days now, which is terrible for me. If I don't exercise, it's like, people that don't get their coffee in the morning. So it's not good when I don't exercise. So I got my exercise in today. So that's why I'm smiling.
Well done, sir. But there's a time when you're trying to your body's trying to heal, that exercise could take you backwards. And so I get it.
Oh yeah.
I get it.
And it's interesting because I was a little worried that maybe my fitness level had dropped over 10 days of not exercising. And I was pleasantly surprised that I felt today just like I hadn't skipped a beat. So that was heartening that I didn't lose any of the fitness that I'd had before. And I did one of my less super stressful, not that I ever do super stressful exercising, but I'm easing my way back in. And I would call it success. And this may have been my body's way of saying, Steve, slow down, man, take some rest. Give it a rest.
I was just getting ready to say that to you. That's what Carissa told me. She's like, you guys, Steve, we're aging out here. I turned 56 on December 10th. And Matt had a birthday here here a few days ago, didn't you, Matt? 43, right?
43. That's right.
15th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we've shared this before, Steve. You also have a birthday, right?
I have a birthday. Well, coming up tomorrow as we're speaking here today. So.
Yeah,
we'll turn the big 6'3".
Wow.
Whoa. Okay.
Now you may have seen this. This came out here not too long ago. There was some research that indicated that there are two particular periods in a human life when the body seems to age a lot faster. And one of those ages is the early 40s, and the other age is the early 60s.
So you and Matt are you're going to both catch up with me.
That's right. But I'm going to try and be the exception, right?
Okay.
Matt and I will be the exceptions.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. So, no, but it's all good. Everything's good. So,
well, thanks for being on today with us.
All right. Yeah. So, a couple of topics we're going to talk about today, and they're really connected to each other. And the first one is about philanthropy. And in particular, we're going to talk about Warren Buffett, one of our favorite topics here. And he recently came out and shared some information about how he is handling his philanthropy, what he's doing with all of his Berkshire Hathaway shares, and put a little communique out there, which shared some of his insights about how he thinks about giving money away, how he's worked it with his children, and just some good insights. So we're going to chat about that. And then related to that, we're going to talk about a book called Die with Zero. And again, I think they're both connected, and we'll build the bridge between the two here. So let's go ahead and start with Buffett's communique. And Matt, do you have some thoughts about what Buffett shared here recently?
It was interesting because he released this letter the week of Thanksgiving, and it was not typical. So it kind of took people by surprise. And part of what he's communicating in this letter, and you can find it online, just a few pages long, but he's discussing his charitable giving, which he's committed to. I believe it's 99% of his net worth will be donated to charity through the giving pledge that he signed. And his net worth too, I was looking it up, it's $145 billion. That's a large sum to be giving away. But yeah, he was transitioning some shares over. So I think he just was reflecting on his philosophy around it and how it's, maybe slightly changed from what he said in the past. Because one of the things that he has spoken about is that, he's giving away 99% of his net worth. So it's like, well, he has 3 children. Well, what about them? And essentially what his philosophy has been is that he will give them enough so they can do anything, but not enough so they can do nothing.
And he gave a number in there, right? Didn't he share how much he gave each of his kids?
So this was when his first wife passed away, Susie. She had a net worth of about $3 billion. And she had left $10 million to each of their 3 kids. And that's kind of what he was referring to, is he believes that was the amount that, allowed them to do that. So I don't know what he specifically has in his estate plan for them. But maybe it's along that same line or not. If they have already received that money, he may not have any desire to leave them anymore. But one of the things that he went on to mention was that, well, she passed away in 2006, and he's been, vocal about this, giving pledge that he signed for quite some time. But he said one of the things that's changed is that, well, his kids are much older now. And so they're in this letter, he referenced them. They're 71, 69, and 66. And so he's like, well, their ability to take on this philanthropic initiative that he wants them to continue, because part of it is he wants them to be involved in the charitable giving side of it, is, well, what happens after they pass away? Because he says in there, he's never wished to create a dynasty or pursue any plan that extended beyond the children. So, you hear in our industry, you hear people talk about generational wealth, people that have liquidity events or, even just saved money and saved enough that they were able to, pass on a lot of wealth to the next generation. And you can structure a lot of different things with estate planning to where those assets can kind of fund multi-generations. And, for me, I don't necessarily have a strong opinion about that. It doesn't feel like a very important thing to me currently at my age. But, everyone's going to have their own views on it. But for Warren, he specifically says, I know my 3 children well and trust them completely. Future generations are another matter. Who can foresee the priorities, intelligence, and fidelity of successive generations to deal with the distribution of extraordinary wealth and amid what may be a far different philanthropic landscape? So he's not interested in creating this, this estate that will just fund his children's children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren in perpetuity. He's giving the money away, and that'll be the end of it once his 3 children pass away. He did say he did put successor trustees in place should something happen to any of his children and, they've been trained on it, what would happen. He then, a little bit more, and this is a little bit on the estate planning side, which is, I think, interesting too, how he talks about it, because he says he has a requirement that any distributions from the foundation that he's leaving to the children to distribute will require a unanimous vote. So think about that. So all 3 of the children have to say yes.
Well, one of the things I like about that is, we've talked about this even in my book, Keen on Retirement, talking about when you're retired, in that next phase of life, you have to think about and learn how to say no when people are asking you to do things just with your time. So you become retired, and now, hey, and that could be a lot of things. up to and including charitable endeavors with your time. And so the same thing happens. He mentions in this letter as well. He talks about there's a lot of opportunity will come at you if you have got a lot of wealth that you're distributing philanthropically.
He calls it targets of opportunity.
What he actually says is, here, this is quoted, "I've explained that my children will forever be besieged with earnest requests from very sincere friends and others. A second reality, when large philanthropic gifts are requested, a no frequently prompts would-be grantees to ponder a different approach, another friend, a different project, whatever." I love his writing, right? "Those who can distribute huge sums are forever regarded as, quote, targets of opportunity. This unpleasant reality comes with the territory. Hence, the unanimous decision provision, that restriction enables an immediate and final reply to grant seekers is that it's not something that would ever receive my brother's consent." And he thinks that would improve the lives of his children, which is one reason why maybe he did that. Well, I guess he's stating that, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah,
and then, hey,
exactly.
Real quick, before we get over that dynastic thing, because he talks about, I have several friends that have got some very substantial net worth who are not interested also in creating dynastic wealth, which is a fancy term for just saying wealth that's going to live on forever to generations that never knew you, which is the same as what Warren Buffett is saying here. Now, they're not. Yeah, so they have wealth, not like his, but still, it's an amount. But I wondered, so I Googled real quick just now while you were speaking, Matt, does Warren Buffett have grandkids? Because, you just spoke of yourself at 43 almost here, 43. No, you are 43. I'm speaking as a 56-year-old, and I do have grandkids. So I could get in line with my buddies that I talked about, or Warren Buffett's ideal here about not providing all this capital for people you never met before who might not even know you or necessarily care down the generational lines. But now that I have 3 grandkids, age 2, and 6 months, it made me think about that. So because I could see wanting to make sure they're taken care of and getting to know them, right? But I pulled up, does Warren Buffett have grandkids? Did you guys know the answer without pulling it up?
I'm going to say no.
He has 3.
Nah.
3 came up. And of course, I'm doing this live while we're on the program here, so I can't really dig in too deeply. I guess I could. But I'm not sure why that hasn't come up for him. Maybe we'll research that and come back to our program later.
He views it as that's their responsibility, the parents, not his.
Sure could be. Yeah.
Because he talks a little bit more about his, the philosophy around the estate plan too. And just what he said is he has a suggestion for all parents, whether they are of modest or staggering wealth, when your children are mature, have them read your will before you sign it.
Yeah. Yes.
Be sure each child understands both the logic for your decisions and the responsibilities they will encounter upon your death, which, we have conversations with clients on a routine basis around that, because as they get older and as their children are getting more established, and even, they could be getting close to retirement themselves, including the children in conversations with us so that they do understand what is going on and how this all works.
Yeah, and I think that was a really interesting takeaway that I got from reading that, about have your kids read your will before you finalize it or before you make a change to it. I thought that was a good idea. Also, I think it's interesting, and we may have touched on this in a previous episode, about Rupert Murdoch. And so as Murdoch thinks about his estate plan and his philanthropy, so Murdoch is I think he owns the majority of like the Wall Street Journal and Barron's, so the big media empire. He's doing pretty much the opposite of what Buffett is doing. He is trying to create a dynasty with his kids and grandkids, and each of his kids, I think, got several $1 billion worth of stock at one point. And then most recently, he tried to change the terms of the trust. And it was set up where I think each of his 4 kids had like an equal share of the company and voting rights. But 3 of the 4 seem to have a little different political persuasion than Rupert does. And the one child who is similar to Rupert he wanted to change the terms of the trust so that that son would have the majority voting control, and so that his newspaper dynasty could maintain its political bent. And so, it is interesting. And, that's why it is so important to work with professionals to ask the right questions, because there is no one size fits all in any of this, whether we're talking philanthropy or we're talking financial planning or we're talking how much money to leave the kids. I mean, everyone's different. Every situation is unique. And we just have to get to what is going to be the best solution for you. And so I really enjoy talking about like what's Buffett doing, because we always want to know what Buffett's doing. But his solution may not be the right solution for everybody, right? And so we need to look at alternatives. And so it's good to have these kinds of discussions.
Yeah.
I love what he said. He said in here as well, he said, Charlie, meaning Charlie Munger, he says he changes his will about every a couple of years in minor ways, keep things simple. So even with the guy with one of the wealthiest people on the planet ever, it's still relatable because he keeps it simple. And he's also not leaving his next generation.
Yeah.
And
all of his assets are in Berkshire stock. It's not a bunch of stuff.
If it's $10 million, he's leaving to 3 kids. We have clients, lots of people that quote normal people might leave more than that to their kids at the end, so that we know and work with. So, but I look at what he said. He said, Charlie and I have witnessed a few cases where a wealthy parent's will that was fully discussed before death actually helped the family become closer. And he says, what could be more satisfying, ? which is kind of cool. So,
and I like that idea of, if you're going to give some money to the kids, give it to them while they're young enough to enjoy it. Because I think you touched on that, where his kids are in their 60s and 70s. And it's like, what are they going to do with the money? If they got the money at that age versus if they got it in their 40s when they were trying to buy a house and raise families and that sort of thing. So it's like, and I think that really is probably a nice segue into the second part of what we want to talk about here, which is this idea of die with zero. So if you do have money that you're, quote, not going to need yourself, either are you going to spend it on yourself, or are you going to give it away so you can see other people enjoy the fruits of your labor? So I think, this book, I think, has been pretty interesting and pretty popular here recently.
Steve, you just baited, like, it was so interesting because you mentioned about giving gifting to your kids when they, earlier in life. And you literally, it did cross the line on tying these two topics together with what the Buffett letter. And if I built
the bridge.
You built you're a pro. I mean, you're a total pro. You've built way harder bridges in some of our other ramblings and so forth over the years. And it's always worked mostly. So, but one thing about the Buffett letter, right quick, for those of you that are that have actually get our show notes when an episode comes out in our blog, we'll attach that to the show notes. So if you're listening now to us through one of the major podcast platforms like Spotify or iTunes or others that we're on, and you want to receive those show notes, we put a lot of work into the show notes to summarize our conversations here and to provide things like this link to this Buffett letter. Go to our website, Keen on Retirement, go to resources and retirement resources. And you can easily just pop your email in there and you can get those show notes. But we will include that letter on the show notes.
And you can get
subscribe to it. To our program here.
At keenwealthadvisors.com. That's right. The resources page there. We'll have the blog posts, and each one of these episodes has its own page, as Bill mentioned, with all the details and everything. So it's a great resource.
Yeah.
So Die with Zero.
Die with Zero. Yeah, it came out in 2020. And we briefly mentioned it, but, reading the Buffett letter, it just got us thinking about it a little bit more about, he's got his kind of philosophy in terms of what he's done with his wealth over time, very, very well documented how he saves as much basically as he could and has just compounded it and is not someone who spends money. I mean, it's just a kind of unique lifestyle that he lives and has amassed $145 billion. The point of the book is not to die with zero. it's to do something different. It's, Die with Zero is definitely a catchy title because, Die with Zero. And it's not to say that you should not save money for retirement. That's not what the author's saying. But what the author is saying is that money is a resource that helps you live your best life. And you should invest in experiences. And if you're able to, do that when you're young, because you will compound the memories of those experiences over your lifetime. So, while Buffett has all this money, how much did he actually spend with his family and enjoy things like that? In some of the books I've read, it sure comes across as that family was, kind of estranged, I think, a little bit. I mean, it's not like they didn't get along. He's talking about his kids, but it just wasn't a tight-knit relationship because he was just working. I mean, that's what he did, what he loves. He reads 500 pages a day. That takes a lot of time to do that.
Goodness.
So there's not a lot of time to do a whole lot else. So this concept of Die with Zero is, I think we encourage our clients, maybe not to die with zero, but the concept of, well, what are the long-term plans with the funds that you've amassed, and how are you going to best use those funds to kind of maximize the rest of your life and include your kids, grandkids, and whatnot, if you so choose.
That's right. And the author, Bill Perkins. So when this first came out, we like Matt said, we skimmed across it about a year ago on our show here. Steve, I think you might have brought it up even and asked us, hey, what do you think about that? And there's been other books written, like Die Broke, I think was one. It said Die Broke. And there were a couple of others around the theme that your last check bounces, which always sounds kind of like just a fun tongue-in-cheek thing to say, your last check bounces. But planning for that is, when we live in the real world with folks that are navigating all these different scenarios, and I think the biggest fear, so to bring this in, the biggest fear is running out of money.
That's right.
In retirement. That's a huge fear. And I'm not saying it's not a valid fear, because it's possible. A lot of people don't even have any money to start with, honestly, going into retirement. It's all Social Security, like something like 40, 50%
self-made people that we work with. And so they're just naturally want to make sure they have enough.
Which makes total sense. So, but you can, this author is speaking about maybe overdoing that fear, like having that be an obsessive fear. It's not rational. And when we first brought this up, I thought, another book on that, on just, spend your last check bouncing. So, but I actually listened to a podcast recently I was sharing with Matt when Matt proposed this topic, and it was the I guess author and doctor Peter Attia. And he does a lot of great work around the healthcare world. I follow him and some of his stuff on longevity and everything. But I did listen to the Bill Perkins, the author of this book, and talk to Peter Attia about this book. So if you don't want to read the whole book for 8 hours or 10 hours, you just want to listen to that 2-hour podcast, it'll give you a huge, you just hear the author actually tell his story about being an energy trader and how he was explaining his life and some of the experiences that he passed on when he was younger. Like Matt was just mentioning, he passed on, I believe, taking a 2-month trip to Europe, staying in hostels with a backpack, and then looked back and said, I'll be able to take a 2-month trip to Europe because he has assets and resources when I'm 50 or 45, but it's never going to be the same as whatever that experience was like. Oh, it could be exotic and 5-star hotels and everything else, but that's not his point. His point was, I missed that opportunity to take that trip as a young person with a backpack going through hostels. And I'm imagining what the memories might be, but I don't have those memories. And so he's suggesting that there's a time and place for certain things, certain experiences. And he also gives there's a chart in the book, but it shows different types of return from, he talked about memory return, like Matt just mentioned, memories. You have these memories, and if you apply it to your own life, think, oh, that is amazing. I do remember that thing I did 12 years ago, and think about it quite often and talk about it quite often. And thinking about those things, not just being purposely obsessed with saving, and always waiting till later to do that thing that you think you missed it because you're at a different time of life, different time of health, different time of capability.
Yeah. Not being able to do the things because you're putting them off to say, I'll do that later. And then later maybe never comes either. I mean, it's unfortunate, but occasionally, we had this happen recently with a client, retired earlier this year, passed away, suddenly, and it happens, and you don't know. And it's, again, he's not saying you should be reckless, but thinking about the things that you want to do when you can do them.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like not being as focused on money. What he's saying is allows them to start thinking about what experiences do I want to have, because we all have a finite time. As far as I know, there's an end to plan for everyone. No one's cracked that code yet. There's definitely folks that are trying live as long as possible. Some say maybe even into the 150s. Great, but you still never know.
And I think one of the interesting metaphors that he talked about, and he didn't sort of come up with this metaphor, but it applies to what he's talking about, and that is this idea of money as a form of energy. And when you think about it, when you work, you're exchanging your time, your intellect, working with your hands maybe to create something. So you're exchanging all of that. In return, you're hopefully creating value, and then someone is paying you some money for the work and the time and the value that you're creating. So then we get this thing called money or dollars or whatever your currency is. And so that essentially represents a form of energy that we expended to get that money. And I think one of the things that the author talks about is, if you die with a big pot of money, what you've done is you've died with a whole bunch of unspent energy that you may have needlessly expended during your earlier years that was never spent, that was never shared. And so I think that's a really interesting way to think about money. And again, he's not the one that created that idea. It's been around for many, many, many years. But I also think it's interesting how it's almost like a battery in that sense, that, you've got a battery that you can charge up, you can store some energy there, and then over time you can use that battery to do something with. And then also there's renewable energy, right? That can continue to renew the energy. That's similar to taking the money that you get in exchange for the energy that you, expended. And if you sort of reinvest that money, you get a return on it. And that's what we call investing, right? So we have to think about what's the right balance between living today, having those experiences. We're going to get a return on that experience over time, because as we reflect back 5 years ago on something that happened today that was a beautiful memory around Christmas or Thanksgiving, and we continue to reflect on that for 5 years and 10 years, there's value in that, right?
Yes.
There's a good feeling in that. But then there's also, we want to invest, we want to save, and we can let that energy compound over time, just like a renewable source of energy. So, and as I said earlier, there's no one right answer here. It's like we have to figure out what's the right mix for you to make sure that you're using your time, you're using your energy, you're using your money in a way that's going to help you live the best life you possibly can.
That's right.
Yeah, I find one thing with technology, and nowadays that we have phones in our pockets all day, every day, taking pictures with your phones, and even this is where maybe there is social media. We talk about a lot of the downsides with social media and with technology, but you can scroll through those pictures, and even Apple, and I'm sure the Android software does this too in different photo apps, where they'll cull together, they'll remind you of memories. Facebook does this all the time. Remember this that happened a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever, and you see people posting those things, and a great way to remember those experiences too, because you see a picture and you can instantly kind of go back to that, what was going on at that time, which is a whole nother value add to kind of what technology has created for everyone.
And luckily with Facebook, since we only post, we only post our good stuff on Facebook. The stuff it throws back at us from before typically is the good stuff, because that's all we ever post. Right?
Yeah.
Stuff. No, I think it's wonderful. What when in light in this what we're talking about today with this die with zero or with thing, the reason that Matt and I we're always sensitive to it. There's this retirement crisis we talk about where folks don't have resources. And we always talk about investing early because the compound interest of starting early is so much, it gets that snowball going and the interest building up over time. So that's just kind of like everybody's just scared to death about having enough money to live on. And so we're not saying, again, you said it earlier, Matt, in your words, he says it in the book for folks, because we don't want someone to use this topic we're speaking of today or this book as an excuse to be reckless with their spending either. So that's why we're just so sensitive about talking about this. We don't want people to go out and start blowing through their cash, not with no plan and no thought, and end up truly running out of money way, way before they should have. So I don't know. I just thought it was good to mention that.
And what they're spending it on too is such a key point of the book. It's not just material possessions, it's experiences is kind of the concept around that.
That's right.
And an example would be the Taylor Swift Eras Tour,
That's right?
Spend your money going to her concert.
I've gone to it.
Yeah,
I spent it. I made
and
a
you're
donation to the Boys
enjoyed
and Girls
it, right?
Club I might have mentioned on here before, and won those in a charity auction. So those funds actually went to a charity. So I actually felt better about it than I normally would have. But
But now it's an experience you're going to treasure forever,
right.
Bill.
That's right. So one of the things that they mention, and he mentions in this book as well, and look, we're the financial advisors. And he even says that, like, if you listen to the Peter Attia podcast, it's 2 hours, it is. And I don't think it's protected on this. I think it's one anybody can listen to without having to pay. He says, I'm not a financial advisor. He's an energy trader. But he says, so use your financial advisors to figure this out. But look, there's a point where you don't need to continue accumulating money. I mean, and we've shared on this program before that, okay, assuming you're not spending frivolously, there's a point where your asset base doesn't need to keep increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. And we've shared on this program many times that a good portion of our clients in our real experience here have more money at the end of their life than they've ever had in their life. Like millions more.
Yep.
Like they're never going to spend it. So we see it. So they try to talk about, and again, they're not professional financial advisors, but they do try to talk about where's that point where your assets don't need to keep, going up, 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 and up. And then everybody also goes through to, well, what if we go through that downturn like an 01, 02 or an 08, 09, where we see the public markets get hit for a year and a half or so before it tries to start coming back. And that process takes 3 years to play out or something. So, making sure things are managed appropriately to get through something like that. But they mentioned in that podcast, like 55, like they were throwing out numbers of like, when does your asset need to peak? And then when can you start pulling it down? But there were also some commentary about, well, what about next generation, which is how we rolled into this from Buffett, from what do you leave to your next generation? And then what do you do philanthropically? I don't know, maybe I speak for myself or however you look at it, but we're self-centered to some extent, I suppose, and you work not to be, and you work to think of others and take care of others. And I mean, even if you think about kids, I was talking to a pastor this morning on the way in, and he said, we were talking about that kind of human nature. You got to work against it over time to be, caring of others. Well, we're trained with it, and he said, I was sitting in a room, I think the two kids had 200 toys total between them, 100 each. And one of the kids took one of the other's toys. So now one of them had 101 toys and the other one only had 99. And the one that had 99 really was not happy. It's like, all right, and they were born with that, that wasn't something they were taught, but we try to be thoughtful and caring. So there's that charitable aspect to us as well when we want to sow into others. It's not, I guess my point is to each their own, whatever your each journey is, but it's not just about, and I'll share my thought, me being okay. It's not just about, hey, I'm okay. Well, if that was the case, I would have retired a long time ago. But I have a bigger thought about, we can create a team here at Keene that touches more families around the country and do some really good work for people. And then the longer that we do that, the more we can sow back into our communities with charitable contributions and other things, and hopefully inspire others to do the same. So that's my journey. That doesn't have to be anybody else's journey. But a key in this book was, don't wait till the end. It was like Warren Buffett. He's talking about he's going to give his kids money when they're 70. Or your kids are 70 and you're going to get the inheritance. Or they've been giving money away to charity now and since, not just at the end. And so like my 3 older kids, they're all out on their own. They're all incredible kids, and they're very successful. They don't need me. They don't need money from me. But it's an interesting thing I say. They don't need it, but they'll never need it.
But they won't turn it away.
Yeah, they gladly accept it.
So they don't need it, but they'll never need it more than right now, because they're all in their 20s. I mean, a couple of them are getting close to 30, but they're 30 or less. They don't need it, but they'll never need it more than right now, because they're just going to keep doing well themselves. They're already demonstrating it. They already have financial plans, and they already are building their wealth. They don't need it, but they will never need it more than now. And so, of course, we do the gifting and all that kind of stuff to them. Just see them do fun, do things and enjoy that. And the same thing goes for charity. Don't give it all away at the end. See your dollars go to work today for you. That's my opinion.
Charity's needed now.
Yeah, that's just mine. So nobody has to adopt that, but that seems to make sense. And that's kind of a theme of this book as well. It's like, so the theme was not spend all your money, die broke, and never take care of your kids in charity. His point was do it as you go.
Yeah.
Do it as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also just add, be intentional about it. I think that's a thread that weaves through this that we haven't explicitly said, but don't just live life through default here and just sort of make things up as you go along, but be really thoughtful about your money and what you want to do, how you want to spend it, how you want to invest it, how you want to help it, or how you want it to help you live the kind of life that you want. Be really intentional in those decisions. And so, I think a great episode here, guys, as always. And anything else that you want to add here as we wrap up?
I think it's a great time of year as we release, this show today, to be thoughtful, kind of reflective here during the holiday season. We're getting ready to go into 2025, a new fresh year. And I think all of us kind of naturally just want to have a new beginning, if you will. And, we'll probably do an episode next time to tease it a little bit. We always have to talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions, right? I mean, we have to talk about that a little bit, and the evolution of our lives and what we see out there. So great time of year to be reflective about these things. We are a financial program. We talk very specifically over our 200 and nearly 30 episodes now about very specific dollar signs, decimal points, planning strategies, rules, regulations, things we see coming down the markets. Matt does an incredible job on this program and his webinars that he does. And other programs like today, we're thinking bigger picture. We're thinking about, gosh, what's our purpose? I mean, like a lot of our clients could retire if they wanted, but they don't, because they really enjoy what they're doing, or they go part-time, or they do something different. And how do you think about that? How do you think about your purpose and why you're doing what you're doing? And even if you're getting ready to retire, you're thinking about it, you're planning for it. What are you going to retire to? These are things that, you have to get the dollar signs and decimal points right. Of course you do. But there's a whole other layer to the thought process around how we're going to maximize that. I call it the second half of life, or the next time period of life, and really get, like you just said, Steve, intentional about that. So that's why we do episodes like this, where we kind of share our thinking and bring resources like this book into play as well. But I'll say one more thing about the Peter and Tia podcast that I listened to with this author. They recommended going to this website, and I did it. I paid like the $12 or something. And it was called, website was called Stoic Reflections, because they both said they did it, and Peter Tia said he did it. And it prints a calendar. You tell it your age, and it sends you they'll either frame it for you, or they'll just send you the thing. I had them send it, so I just downloaded it. So it's called the Memento Mori calendar, and I put in there my age, 56, and it gives you a box for every week of your life. And I was looking at it here. It actually sent me one. It took it out to age 80. And I think that's a little short. I think it should say age 100. But I actually sent an email to the creator and asked him to send me one with 100, but he hasn't responded yet. So what it does is it darkens in every box every week of your life. So it darkened in every week of my life from age 0 to 56. And then now I have open boxes from age 55 to 80 in this particular one, that every week you're supposed to go in and visually go in and mark off that week. And I can tell you could probably do the math. about 2/3 of my boxes, if you think 80 is a number, I think I'm longer, but anyway, maybe they call that useful. Who knows? 2/3 of them are darkened in already. And so I've got a visual here about how I'm going to maximize the rest of those boxes that I'm checking off pretty darn quickly. We all know time passes. And at the bottom of this calendar, if anybody does it, you'll see they print this quote by Seneca. It said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough, and it has been given in sufficiently generous measure to allow the accomplishment of the very greatest things, if the whole of it is well invested." So there you go, Steve. Ask me to close out a program again in the future.
And you knocked it out of the park, Bill. All right. Well, thank you guys as always, and we appreciate each one of you listening to this. So to get more information, please visit us at keenwealthadvisors.com and make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and you can do that in your favorite app that you're listening to us in. And please tell all your friends and colleagues about the show as well. We appreciate all your help in that area. So, all right, guys, that's a wrap for today. So thank you, and we'll look forward to the next episode of Keen on Retirement.
All right. Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
The Steve Sandusky Advisor Network and Belay Advisor are not affiliated with Keen Wealth Advisors. Opinions expressed by Steve are his own and not necessarily the opinions of Keen Wealth Advisors. Keen Wealth Advisors is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Keen Wealth Advisors and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. The contents of this podcast are intended for the residents of the United States of America. No advice may be rendered by Keen Wealth Advisors unless a client service agreement is in place. This program is intended for informational purposes only and should not be construed as advice on or a recommendation of any particular investment, strategy, or as tax or legal advice for your specific situation. Keen Wealth Advisors is not a tax or legal advisor. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your licensed professional prior to investing. Information in this program was compiled from sources believed to be reliable. Due to the constant state of data changing, we do not guarantee the timeliness or the accuracy of the information provided. Our views or opinions at the time you are listening to the podcast may be different than they were when the podcast was recorded. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any prices that are referenced or market forecasts are as of the date stated and are not necessarily our opinions moving forward. As always, please remember, investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. This podcast is not allowed to be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced without permission from Keen Wealth Advisors.